Hello, my name is Ed Long. I'm the Head of History at Ripon Grammar School, and welcome to this sixth form open evening virtual talk on A-level history. So, if I may, I'd like to start by saying I hope that you are all well and staying safe in these interesting times. Hopefully they won't continue for too much longer. So, what I'd like to talk to you about is A-level history, what it involves, why you should definitely consider doing it. But rather than just me trying to convince you, I do have some A-level current upper sixth students lined up to tell you their views on it as well. Now, the first piece of advice I would give, if I may, would be the same piece of advice about any A-level subject that you might be thinking of doing. There are three things I would say that you need to consider. The first thing is, do you enjoy the subject? If the answer for history to that question is absolutely, then you should definitely give A-level history some lengthy consideration. The second thing to think about is, are you good at it? Now, that's the ideal, but what is absolutely vital is, are you willing to work hard at it to get the best grade that you possibly can? The third thing you might want to consider is, will it be useful for your university choice or your work choice or your career in the longer term? It's not just about being a history teacher or an archaeologist or an archivist or anything like that. You might not be aware that many of the top CEOs in FTSE 100 companies actually have history or history-related degrees. For example, the CEO of Chipotle has a history degree. So those are definitely the things to think about before we embark on looking at what A-level history actually involves. But here we go. Now, if I may, I think that this is one of the best times ever to be studying history, because the world around us is so dynamic and at times very, very hard to understand, that the more basis we have to make decisions about who to vote for, who to believe, who to listen to, the better we will make those decisions. And especially when we have things like this, we have tweets, we have social media that can quite often not be factually accurate. One of the key skills that we can learn as historians is how to differentiate between those competing claims. And so this is not just skills for an A-level or even for a university course. This is skills for everyday life, and thus they are absolutely vital. And we will spend 2 years concentrating on them in A-level history and really refining those skills. So there are three parts, there are three units to A-level history, and the first one of those is British history. And can I suggest that in looking at the history of Britain from the mid-19th to the mid-20th century, this can tell us an awful lot about who we are and about the country that we live in. And that is particularly important given Brexit, that we are redefining and questioning many of those things. And so it's important to know exactly what we stand for and who we might be in the future. Without further ado, let me pass you on to Cameron, one of our A-level historians in upper sixth, to tell you a bit more about the course itself and what sparked his interest in this area. Over to you, Cam.
So the British history section starts from just after the start of the Victorian period up until the 1950s, and from then it covers mostly British domestic issues between that time. So that's talking from Disraeli up until just before Ted Heath. I personally really enjoy British history because I'm a big fan of British politics itself. So it's really nice to get an insight in how, in the sort of precedent that these politicians set, which currently informs a lot about our current political system, and a lot of political intricacies and parliamentary precedents comes from these times. And it's really interesting as well to look at the tactics that they use. For example, there was a lot of sneaky underhand tactics used by Disraeli, for example, that were used by Cameron and Boris and Theresa, which I found really interesting.
Many thanks, Cam. That was tremendous. So, just to confirm, what this will ultimately result in is an exam at the end of upper sixth, which is worth 80 marks, and the total of the entire level is 200. So this is worth 40%. Moving on, the second unit that we study, which results in an exam at the end, is the Cold War, starting from 1945, going right up to 1991. And again, if we look at the world around us, this is essentially about international relations and countries trying to avoid going to war with each other, trying to reach trade deals with each other, trying to compete, but without escalating to the point of almost no return, as happened in 1962 in Cuba. Once again, let me pass you over to one of our most erudite upper sixth students. This is Freddie, who will tell you more about the course and why he has enjoyed it so much.
Hi, I'm Freddie and I'm in upper sixth. So for the other half of the history course, we study the Cold War from 1945 to 1991. It's a really interesting insight into the US-USSR rivalry, and we see how it plays out across the whole world. So I like it because of that global aspect to it. It's our ability to see the history of the whole globe rather than just focusing on one country or one aspect. And you can very much see the sort of tangible impacts of it today, be that in Southeast Asia, Central America or Europe. And furthermore, it contrasts really well with the British side of the course, which means that we can sort of have a good understanding and a good grounding in history both at home and abroad. And it makes us more rounded historians as a result.
Once again, 80 marks out of 200, quite a lengthy exam at the end of upper sixth, but the scope and the range of the Cold War is absolutely tremendous, with all these exotic locations that we visit, from Cuba to Vietnam, Japan, China, Guatemala, Grenada, Southern Africa, for example, in Angola. You really get a sense of world history from this. It's an absolutely tremendous unit. Third and final aspect of the course is coursework. So no exam, but a lengthy essay that you have a couple of drafts to hone the skills for, with meetings with a supervisor. And this is on slavery and abolition in the United States. Now, considering the climate of Black Lives Matter, the world post the awful murder of George Floyd back in May, this is vital to understand how racism works and how America has got to be the way that it is. And although we mostly focus on America, we do talk about Britain and France, in fact, as well, in this struggle for civil rights, for the ending of slavery, for the vote, ultimately, for African Americans. This is worth 20%, 40 marks out of 200 of the entire A-level. Once again, let me pass you on to your third and final A-level expert from upper sixth. This is Yusuf.
In this part of history, which I would argue is the best, if not one of the best, you get to learn about African American rights and their advancement in American society right up from the Revolutionary War, and the impact that specific events in that history has upon this large group of people. I love this subject because Frederick Douglass said that knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. And I believe that in this day and age, with events like this happening, which I'm sure you all know, it is vital to learn about the why and the how of what goes on in our world today. You get to learn about what this flag means, who these people are, and why this nation is what it is today. And to me, there's nothing better.
Many thanks for that, Yusuf. Now, those of you who are already at Ripon Grammar School will perhaps be aware of team history and who we are. There's myself, there's Mrs. Fell, Mr. Bruce, and the headmaster, Mr. Webb. And between us, we cover those three units. But we don't just cover what happened. We really emphasize these skills. We really get into the debate and the discussion about these key aspects in history from across these three units. So what we really seek to do is to take students beyond just the specification, and we seek to enhance their experience so that when they move on to work or university, they are very well prepared. Now, one of the things we do in order to try and achieve that is we have a sixth form society called the Order of the Cincinnati. Now, I'm afraid I can't tell you why it's called that, because you have to come to one of the meetings to find out. However, this is an example of one of those talks from earlier this year from an ex-colleague of mine at my old school who talked to us about the life and times of Teddy Roosevelt, a very controversial and interesting president of the United States. And most recently we had a talk from Professor Frank Corigliano from Edinburgh University about the life and legacy of Thomas Jefferson, which tied in very nicely to our abolition and slavery coursework unit. So the aim here is to take students beyond the specifications, to take them beyond just the classroom and really to get to grips with history, and also to set them up for what they might expect in the workplace or at university or in their career later on. Further to that end, we do try and get out the classroom as much as we can, pandemic notwithstanding, to actually go and reach out and touch history, to go and actually see it, because learning it in a classroom is of course tremendous, but to actually go out and put your hand against history is something that really can move students and move also us as staff, because you really feel that connection. Earlier this year, we went to Munich and Vienna with our GCSE students. Some of your sons and daughters may well have been on that, and went to look at the rise of the Nazi Party out of the ashes of World War I. And we were there for 5 nights, and it really was a tremendous, not just historical, but cultural, linguistic, and culinary experience as well. We do hope in the future to bring in a trip to the United States, and almost certainly a key feature of that will be going to Washington, D.C., the heart of the federal government, to see monuments such as the Jefferson Memorial that you can see here, and really to question, as we do in our Abolition and Slavery coursework unit, how do we memorialise and should we memorialise people like Thomas Jefferson, who are ex-slave owners and at the same time played key roles in the foundation of the United States. So really going there and asking those questions is a key part of what we want to do as well. I hope that's given you a good idea of what we cover. You may well have more questions, and in which case please do feel free absolutely to get in touch by email so that you can so that I can help you to resolve any of those questions that you might have. You do also follow us on Twitter at RGS_history, where you can see what we're up to. So thank you very much for your time. I hope that was informative and useful. Please do get in touch if you wish, and stay safe, and hopefully see you in an A-level classroom studying history very soon. Thank you very much.